This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, back to the position review grind. Today, we're looking at the entire offensive line to see if the Cleveland Browns offensive line, as it stands right now, as camp is kicking off, is deep enough to make it through the season. Let's get started because, I mean, this is a whole giant group of players, so we're just going to have to get this started and jump right into the room. So your starters, you have Joe Bitonio, who is ranked number 2 out of all guards last year. You have Ethan Posick, who was ranked number 3 out of all centers last year. You have Wyatt Teller, who was 18th of all guards last year. You have Jack Conklin, who was 45th of all guards, and all these rankings are according to Pro Football Focus, and Jed Wills, who was 56th of all tackles. So the theoretical weak spot of this team is tackle, or at least on the line. Still in a pretty good spot with your starters. And then you have backups: DeJuan Jones, James Hudson, Nick Harris, Luke Whippler, Dawson Deaton, Michael Dunn, Drew Forbes, Wes Martin, Kobe Gossett, Tyrone Wheatley. So we'll start with the tackle position. And talk about how we feel about the starters at the tackle position and the backup. Now, the tackle position is interesting because I don't think either two of the guys that they have backing up right now, being the swing tackles, are great options to be swing tackles. Like maybe James Hudson could be a swing tackle. He plays just as well on the left side as he does on the right side, but he hasn't played well when he's out there on a consistent basis, so especially recently. So there's a little bit to be concerned there with James. When it comes to DeJuan Jones, I think he's almost exclusively a right tackle. I think you want him at right tackle. I think that's where you want to put him. Some guys just favor that side. I think he just favors the right tackle side. And also you want to get him in a position of where he's likely to see the field in year one. And I think that's right tackle more than it is left tackle. The starting tackles, you have Jack Conklin, who, let's be honest, he's been on a bit of a slide the last couple of years. 2020, I think he was first or second team All Pro, but since then, much like the rest of this offensive line outside of Joe Bitonio and Ethan Posick have taken a little bit of a step back. Jed Wills, you could say the same thing. He's taken steps back since his rookie years, or at least he's taken a step back since his rookie year, or at least he hasn't grown significantly from that in the way that you would want. My theory with Jed is Jed's somebody who plays much better when he's on the team that's winning, because that's kind of what motivates him. Some guys are just like that. It's fine. As far as, and you can live with that, because if you're winning games, then Jed's going to play well. And if you're losing games, then you're losing games, right? But it's not going to be because Jed's not that awful of a tackle. Where you get kind of concerned with is that Jack Conklin spot, because the injuries there, and I think that's why you see that both of the backup tackles are right tackles, because the injury and the inconsistent play starting to come up on Jack, right? He's getting up there in age. I know he got extended last year, but I think they're looking for a way out with Jack Conklin. They don't see one immediately, or at least they didn't see one during the season when they gave him that extension. But if they can get a way out, they'll get a way out with Jack Conklin, I think so. Jed Wills, I don't know what the plan is for him. I think they're going to wait till they get another first-round pick to try to replace left tackle. So I think he's safe until that moment, because he's much better than what you can get in free agency. He's much better than what you can get in the third or second round of the draft at left tackle. But he's not your ideal left tackle. You know what I mean? So you're just kind of in a weird spot with him. At guard, the Browns have Joe Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, Michael Dunn, Drew Forbes, Wes Martin, Kobe Gossett, and Tyrone Wheatley. It goes without saying, we know who the starters are. At guard, you have some of the best starters in the NFL in Joe and Wyatt. Even though Wyatt's been a little bit inconsistent, we know that Joe, for almost 10 years has held it down here at that guard position. Michael Dunn is somebody who stepped up for this team in 2020. And look, 2020 seems to be the year for this offensive line, right? Like every offensive lineman outside of Ethan Posick that I'm talking about that had a great year, it seems like it was in 2020. Now, Michael Dunn didn't have a great year. He had a couple great moments in 2020, and he is kind of the default backup guard for both positions. And you have Drew Forbes, Wes Martin, Kobe Gossett, Tyrone Wheatley also in the mix there. I'm interested to see how many offensive linemen they keep. Usually the Browns keep 10 or close to that number. I'm thinking you're going to keep DeJuan. You're probably going to keep James Hudson. You're going to keep Luke Whippler. You're going to keep probably Drew Forbes or Michael Dunn. You're going to keep Michael Dunn. Maybe Drew Forbes, and that's your 10. But it's going to be interesting to see if even they feel like the need to keep a backup center, right? Like, are they going to feel the need to keep Nick Harris or Luke Whippler? Well, Luke Whippler is probably going to make the team, but are they going to feel the need to keep somebody like a Nick Harris who's a more qualified backup center, but can't really play any other position? So, once you get to the backup offensive lineman, you have some spots for developmental guys, and then you have some guys who could be used for utility, and you got to be real flexible with it. So it'd be interesting to see. But Joe, Wyatt, it's a great combination there. There's really no complaints. At center, you have Ethan Posick, Nick Harris, Luke Whippler, and then Dawson Deaton. I would say it's pretty much a lock here. Ethan Posick and probably Luke Whippler. If Luke Whippler doesn't make the team, then it's Nick Harris, Dawson Deaton. I don't know what they're going to do with him. But center seems to be one of those positions that they have pretty locked down. This whole offensive line, the conversation is not going to be that interesting when it comes to who's going to start. The conversation gets more interesting when it comes to how are the starters going to play? How are the starters going to adjust to, I wouldn't say a new system. I don't think it's going to be a new system, but a new style of play or new riff on what they're doing, right? Because again, we keep going back to 2020 to talk about these offensive linemen's best years. Obviously, with the investment at quarterback that they've made over the last couple of years, they're going to be moving away from that 2020 style of football. And the question is, was that offensive line great at all things, or were they great at the thing that they used the most in 2020, which is running the ball, being able to power guys and doing a lot of play action? That stuff's not going to happen as much anymore, right? You're not going to be running as much hard play action with Deshaun Watson. You're not going to be running the ball out of the same packages with Nick Chubb this year. So the question is this offensive line good enough to play this new style of play? Now, conventional knowledge would say yes, because these are not bad offensive linemen. In your starting five, you have no bad offensive linemen in the group, right? Even if Jed Wills is your worst offensive lineman, you're good. You're very good, right? So conventional knowledge would tell you that. But there are some things that do concern me about the layout of this offensive line, and part of it's where the weak links are, right? Right tackle, left tackle. Not saying that these are bad players, but if we're looking at them and comparing them to the interior of this offensive line, the tackles are the weak link, right? That doesn't mean they stink. That just means they're the weak link. That means that teams are going to much prefer to attack them than Joe Bitonio. Teams are going to much prefer to attack them than Wyatt Teller. So how are teams going to be able to take advantage of that? And how does Deshaun Watson's play style play into that? And that's a little bit concerning, because Deshaun Watson's play style does kind of play into taking advantage of tackles, because sometimes he gets very deep in his drops, blows his protection angles, and allows guys to get past his tackles a little bit easier than they should. Jake Burns, when he talks about it, he says, hey, a lot of playing tackle with a guy like Deshaun Watson is playing basketball. How well can you stay in front of somebody? Now, Jed, I have less worries about that. I think that would be more, he would be more engaged with that kind of thing. Like he'll be fine. He has good enough feet to do that. What we've seen from Jack Conklin has been concerning when it comes to that. And the question is, how long of a rope do we give Jack Conklin? I think we've been so focused, or some of the fan base has been so focused on being mad at Jed Wills when Jack Conklin's been on the other side there, going virtually unnoticed. And I think that's the one you need to notice more and be more concerned about. I'm not saying that Jed has nothing that you need to be concerned about. He certainly does. But Jack, there's some stuff there with this transition that I'm worried, right? And especially with having DeJuan, and we'll see if DeJuan's even ready to play year one. He hasn't even practiced yet. But let's say DeJuan gets out there and he looks similar to what he did at Ohio State. That's somebody who's more qualified to block for Deshaun because he's somebody who's going to have better feet, better athleticism, a better ability to just stay in front of somebody versus Jack, who's better at run blocking and kind of like doing the quick set pass blocking stuff. But when those possessions, when the quarterback holds the ball a little bit longer, when the quarterback wants to get a little bit more mobile, that's where Jack Conklin's skill set starts to break down a little bit. That's where his weaknesses start to get exposed. It's been kind of constant throughout his career. It's been when he hasn't looked his best. And I worry about that now that he's older. He's gone through some injuries. He's been missing time. His play has declined. Now he's being put in this situation. I really worry about that. The good news is that, hey, I feel like DeJuan Jones and James Hudson, that's good depth right there at tackle. So I don't think this is a disaster by any means, but I would say if I had one large concern with this room, it would be that. Now, what are the supplements that they have in this room? I think David Njoku is going to be a great supplement for this room. I think they have elite tackle eligible options. You talk about just bringing DeJuan Jones big ass around on a pool as an eligible tackle, as an eligible receiver on some of these plays where you want to bring in an extra tight end. You could just bring in DeJuan Jones. You could bring in James Hudson, who we saw do a great job at that last year. You have great short yardage options here with your tackle eligible. And then David Njoku also provides an excellent service as a blocker if you need him. And then Nick Chubb being in the backfield will make any offensive line look better because he's one of the best at his position. So what's the depth picture looking like? I kind of went over this, but you know what my scale is: spare tire. Well, no, my scale is fix a flat, spare donut, spare tire. And when it comes to the tackle position, they have a spare tire there. DeJuan Jones and not Jack Conklin, DeJuan Jones and James Hudson being behind those two tackles, you feel really good. If you have an injury there, you feel like, hey, you can live and throw somebody out there. In some cases, it might be the case if DeJuan, if he has a good camp, that if you could put DeJuan in there, you might get even better because the upside on him is ridiculous. At guard, I think you have a donut there. Look, you don't want to lose Joel. You don't want to lose Wyatt. If you get to Michael Dunn, I think you're fine. If you lose both, if you lose more than one tackle guard, then you're in trouble because now we're talking about Drew Forbes or moving like a center over the guard. We can make something work for a minor injury, but we can't fix a major problem at guard if it pops up. And then if there's center, you feel pretty good. I think this is another spare tire situation. Ethan Posick, I think he'll be fine to start. Obviously, he was one of the best centers in football. But if you have to go to Luke Whippler, if you have to go to Nick Harris, I think they'll be fine too. Especially if Nick Harris stays on the team, I think you'll be absolutely fine with him there. So what would I give this room? I would give them a A. I think there's some room for improvement. A lot of this is on reputation. I think they'll just be better with better quarterback play and better with a more consistent kind of flow of the offense. But I do have some concerns at tackle. I do have some concerns with guard depth, and I do have some concerns about the adjustment that this team's going to be able to make. But again, if Jed Wills is your worst tackle, you're doing all right. I mean, if Jed Wills not your worst tackle, if he's your worst offensive lineman, then you're doing all right. But that's my thoughts on the offensive line room. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. You have a great day. Have a good night.